Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Watson is here with us.
Thank you very much.
How old are you now, Joe?
Well, I'm 80 years old.
80 years
God
old.
almighty, you do not look it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you know what? I'm into natural foods. I eat a lot of natural foods. I exercise a lot and everything else, so maybe that's what keeps me looking a little young, I guess. I don't know.
How long have you been doing the natural food diet? Has it been a long time?
Oh, since the 70s.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow. So you were ahead of the curve.
My first wife, she went to visit her sister in Vancouver in 1976. And she came back. We were on the road trip for 10 days. She came back with a yogurt maker. Now, who in the hell ever heard of a yogurt maker in 1976?
Right.
Because I certainly hadn't. So she decided to start making this yogurt. And I said, oh, my goodness, God. So in a way, being a husband, you have to go along with the female. If you don't, it doesn't look good.
No.
Right? And so in a way, she started making this yogurt. And she started feeding the kids and myself and everything else. And then, a lot of people thought we weren't all there, obviously. And,
right.
And then we had a Pollyanna in 1977. So I had to buy a gift for a player, and it was Bobby Clark. So I bought Clarky a yogurt maker. Oh, my God almighty. I bet you it hasn't been used still, and it's 1977.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
I grew up with the Legion of Doom and the guys in the 80s. I went to the finals in 87. So the Broad Street Bullies were a little bit before my time, but if not for my mom and dad, who were huge fans of the Flyers in the 70s, I wouldn't be the Flyers fan that I am today. And so the moment where you come out on the ice, they turn the lights out, they kick the music in, the orange glow comes out, and they stopped the alumni game for Joe freaking Watson. And you came out on the ice, and the crowd went nuts. It was such a cool moment, and I was so happy for you and everybody else in that building.
Yeah, well, you know what? I wasn't expected to do that. I mean, I went to Brad Marsh, who organized the whole thing, and I said, Brad, I'd like to get dressed prior to the game and go out on the ice with my teammates, be introduced, then be ready to start the game. And he says, oh, no, we have something special going on. I said, oh, really? So that was special. But I get out the ice and I start whirling around. Next thing you know, I almost fall, for God's sake.
No.
Oh, my God almighty.
The foreword to your book was written by Bobby Orr, one of the all-time greats, Bruin, of course. But what was your relationship like with him during your playing days?
Well, him and I met him in 1965 in training camp in London, Ontario, and that's where the Bruins had their training camp, and I was invited to it. So he was there, and I was there, obviously. And when I looked at him, he was 135 or 140 pounds. I said, how in the hell can this guy be a hockey player? Really, 135 pounds. And so in a way, what he did after training camp, he went home and got a rowing machine, and he rowed for 5-6 months. 2 hours a day sometimes, and he put on 55 pounds of muscle.
Jesus.
So the next year I meet him in training camp in London. I said, I can't believe he's the same guy. So we were the only two single guys in the Bruins in 66. So we decided to live together. Well, he was a cook, and I had to wash the dishes and vacuum and everything else. And we had a great rapport. We still have a great rapport today. And I talked to him about my book, and he said, well, if you need help, I'll help you. So
that's great. Now let me ask you: have you sent him a yogurt machine?
You have a ton of memories from your playing days, and I'm sure you have a ton of memories from just outside of your playing days, hanging with the team and stuff like that. But I want you to tell us about the time you convinced somebody that Catalina Island was Hawaii.
Well, you're flying into L.A., and Bob Kelly was a rookie this first year of the team, So we're on the plane, and somebody hollers, there's Hawaii. Well, a hound knocked 4 people out of the way to get a look out the window. He couldn't believe that was Hawaii, but he believed it.
It's that close.
And then he needed winter tires. Says, well, the best place to get winter tires was go to L.A. So he hired a cab in L.A. and he drove around.
To get winter tires?
Find winter tires. He couldn't find any.
Oh, my God. Come on.
Oh, my God.
The Howe was a great guy, and he's a great teammate of mine and a great friend. And we had a lot of fun with a lot of people, but that was one particular time that we had fun with the Hound.
The winter tires are much cheaper in Hawaii. You should have known that. You recognize Preston from the Phantoms, and we started down a line. We wanted to save it for the air. And Preston, you were asking.
Yeah, I'd asked Joe. There used to be in between the periods, so I was an in-arena host, and in between the periods, we would go out on the ice and we'd do some promotions, and before we would go on, the teams would have to come off the ice. So we would be in the spectrum, and we'd be waiting in the hallways for the teams to enter, to exit the ice and go into their locker rooms. And before they would come out, there was a gate that they would close in the hallway. It was an old iron gate. That thing swung around. They locked it shut. And I had asked Joe, I had heard that was because of Billy Barber got into a fight one time in the hallway, but it was a totally different story.
It really was. It was an exhibition game against the Bruins, I think in 76 or 77. And Wayne Cashman and Paul Holmgren got into it on the ice. And then they threw him out of the game. And, of course, you got to go up a hallway there about maybe 50 feet. And Cashman went out his side, and Holmgren came up his side. So Cashman waited till he saw Holmgren, and then he yelled and screamed at him. Well, Holmgren took off with his skates on, running down the hallway after him, and all hell broke loose.
It's a concrete floor, by the way.
He said sparks. Sparks were jumping.
Sparks were flying and everything else. Oh, my God almighty. I've seen a lot of things in hockey, but nothing like that.
So
boy.
They put a gate in there that they would close between periods so that the teams couldn't get at each other. It was so Philadelphia.
That's hilarious.
So Philly. Yeah. When you sit down to write this book, what did you decide you were going to do? Was it Joe Watson's life from birth to now, or what was the idea?
Well, we went to Russia 5 years ago. We took a reporter with Bill Meltzer, who writes for the Flyers, does a great job with the Flyers, and while we were over there, he came on the trip, and he started writing about our trip to Russia. And he had such a big following, and I didn't realize this till we got on the plane coming back from Moscow, that he had a big following, and people were paying close attention to us. Mm-hmm. And so I said to myself, my God, he is a good writer, and a lot of people have told me that. So I said, if I ever decide to do a book, and my wife convinced me to do a book, and about a year and a half later, I phoned up one day and said, listen, Bill, I'd like to do a book. And a lot of people have told me that I have a lot of great stories of the Flyers because I've been here since the inception. And that's where I came to the idea of doing a book. And
the time felt right.
It took us 3.5 years to complete it.
Wow.
And it really is. I mean, if you really enjoy stories, there's a lot of great stories. Oh, my God. Yeah.
How old's your brother, Jimmy?
He's 70.
He's 70? Okay, yeah. And so, when I told my dad yesterday that you were going to be on the show today, and I said Joe Watson, and he started telling stories about you, and then talked about Jimmy. But my dad and my mom both always, whenever they say your name, they say Joe Watson, Smithers, BC, because that's where you grew up.
Yeah.
And
yeah, right.
And so they knew that Bobby was from Flin Flon. And they knew they knew your hometown. And there was such an intimate connection with Philadelphia and the Flyers in that 70s era. And I don't know if that will ever be replicated because they knew you guys not just as players, but as young men.
Yeah. You know what? We came along at the right time. The city was in dire need of something because, of all the stuff, the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And we just came along at the right time. And it was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's the way we played. And may the best man, when you got $100 in your pocket, I got $100 in my pocket, may the best man win. And that's the approach we took. And of course, Freddie Shearer, our coach, Freddie devised a system for us to play, and we're going to respect what we're not going to respect. And we play teams we're not going to respect them. We're going to go out there and to dominate them, hopefully win the game. And hockey was hockey's a very intimidating sport, just like football. And it was an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, by God. And we wanted to win more than the other team. There's a lot of teams would play with us for maybe 40, 45 minutes, but then they get tired of getting hit. And they just wear themselves out, and we would take over. Yes. A lot of games were close, but late in the game, we would take over and dominated. And the
legend is born.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie, the musician, and he's a film director as well. He was, for a while, had been working on a movie that was supposed to be a depiction of you guys.
Right.
So the question I'll ask you is, okay, if this movie ever gets done, who's playing you in the movie?
Well, you're funny you mentioned that because I sat with him in a box there at one of the Flyer games here, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there talking. He says, I'm trying to figure out who would play you. We never came to a conclusion who that would. No, but yeah.
Yeah.
But now there's a couple movies being made about the Broad Street Bullies and the Russian game that are going to coming out here the next while.
Documentaries?
Documentaries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be wild.
We got interviewed. I got interviewed from a fellow from L.A. who came in, and he interviewed most of the players. And so they're making a documentary about the Broad Street Bullies. So it's an iconic name. It doesn't matter where you go.
Yeah.
You know what? I was at a function the other day, and somebody mentioned that there'll never be another team in sports like the Broad Street Bullies. And it doesn't matter if the Phillies won the World Series 5 times, and the Flyers won it twice, or whatever, or the Eagles won, or Sixers. The Broad Street Bullies will always be remembered by people in the Philadelphia area. They will.
And you've stayed connected to this team this entire time. You've been an ambassador to the team. You go to the games and everything. And I wanted to take your temperature on the current group, because we were really happy to see Danny Briere step into his position and Keith Jones.
Yep.
Really excited about that. How do you feel about it as a fan?
I love this team. You know, the game is built on speed, and thank God I wasn't around now, because I couldn't play the game. They're so bloody fast. These guys are fast, and they move. I remember I was at a practice in September this past year, and I was watching a practice, and I said, oh, my God, these guys are fast. And their speed of 20, 23, 24 miles an hour, our top speed was probably 10 or 15.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you the game is built on speed and finesse, and these guys are really good. And it's very exciting to watch this team.
Yeah.
I love it. I love watching the team.
I do too, and they're fun to root for. And the other night, they did not play a good first period, and they were down 1-0, and they were lucky to be only down by 1.
Right.
And then they played really well in the second and third. And I've been reading about that game against the Panthers, who are a good team. And it seems like these guys, and much more so than in the last few years, are really playing for each other, and they really want to impress their coach. Because Torts is a demanding guy.
Yeah, I love the coach. I've never met him personally. But
really?
But he reminds me of Freddie Sherwood in some ways. Yeah, he really does. And, Freddie Sherwood had so much success as a coach. But, he doesn't say a lot, but when he says something, he makes sense. I mean, a lot of guys are very redundant. They say the same thing over and over and over. Not this guy.
When you lose the respect of the team, it's over, right?
Oh, sure it is. Absolutely right.
So with the game and the Bullies and the physicality of all that, and obviously the game now you're saying is evolved to be a much more intricate, precise, speed-driven. People though nostalgically look back at that physicality and eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth.
Yeah.
And that it's of a times when you talk about I don't think we'll ever get back to that.
No.
But it is, when it happens, it's still a crowd pleaser. And you start smiling and laughing because it's the truth. The story's like having to put up a gate. It's what fuels the legend. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, you know what? When you mention that, you know who really love the fights? The women. And I'll tell you why, because they're cooped up all day with kids, and they want to get out of that house and go to a game and get their frustrations out somehow or another. And so they go out there and they holler and scream when their fight breaks out. They love it. The women love it. And so the guy, but women love the fierceness of the game. And I think that's one of the reasons that we were very popular, our alumni team. I can go down the street today in Philadelphia and somebody will say, I remember this, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And I said, oh, really? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What a legacy.
Huh?
What a legacy.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. Oh, my God.
Joe, how do you think things would have been back then if you would have made the kind of money that the guys make now?
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
No. You would have the Joe Watson yogurt maker.
Yeah, you're right.
You'd be the George Foreman.
Oh, my. Yeah, you're right. Oh, boy. Wow. But I want to tell you a story, if I may, here about the Russians in 76.
Yeah.
They were the most dominating team in Europe, and we were the most dominant team in North America. So they were over here beating the top teams. They beat the Bruins, the Rangers. They tied Montreal. So Clarence Campbell, who didn't like the Flyers, he didn't like us when we won the Stanley Cup. He didn't want to present us the Stanley Cup. He thought we were bad for hockey, but wherever he went, we sold the buildings out. But anyway, so we have a Thursday game in Toronto, and we were not well liked in Toronto. But I couldn't believe how many people came by our bus and said, "Listen, you have to beat the Russians on Sunday." And I never realized what it really meant to the people in Canada. Definitely. So in a way, we have a practice on a Saturday. The Russians practice. And then we have a little banquet in the Blue Line, the old Blue Line Club, and they're introducing the Russians. They got a light applause. Then they start introducing the Flyers. Well, they come to number 8, Dave Schultz.
Oh.
All of a sudden, the Russians are looking around. Where is this guy? Where is this guy? So we knew they were a little apprehensive about coming on the ice with it. And when I mentioned that Lloyd Gilmore was our referee and he let us play our game, and And if Trechak hadn't have played well, we would have beat him. Trechak stopped 49 shots, and they only had 13 shots in our net. Wow. And if he hadn't have played well, we would have beat him 10-1.
Wow.
10-1.
Wow.
Oh,
you guys
God,
outshot them by that much?
49-13.
That's insane.
Oh. So anyway, and we're in a shorthanded situation the second period, and I don't go beyond center ice most of the time, being a very defensive-minded defenseman, but I had an opportunity because I watched the Russians make a line change, and they were very slow at doing it. So I went up the ice with Selesky and Kinderchuk, and Selesky takes a shot, and Trechak makes a save. Well, I happen to sneak in there and tuck the puck in the net. And, oh, my God. So anyway, I was very, very excited. And I proved one thing. A white man can't jump very high because I jumped about 3 inches off the ice, and that was it. That was it. But anyway, after the game, Coach Sherrill comes in. He says, Joe, by scoring that shorthanded goal, you set Russian back 25 years, or Russian program back, and they still haven't recovered. It's
That's
40 years, 50
awesome.
years ago.
That's
awesome.
That's fantastic.
Everyone wants to, wants to know that you meant something. You meant something to people. And then also, when we are out, and this is nowhere near your legacy, but if some people come up and they'll say they enjoyed the show, or there was a tough time in their lives and it meant something.
Yeah.
What greater gift to know that you could walk down the street and 40 years after, or whatever, you're in that person's mind.
You know
Is
what?
there anything better?
Oh boy, you know what? And I want to refer to another. I was downtown here about 4 years ago, and there's a Philadelphia policeman came up to me and he said, "Joe," I said, "Yeah." He says, "You saved my son's life." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "The Alumni Association with Brad Marsh leads our Alumni Association. We've done so many great things, but we help these soldiers that come back from the war, the warriors." And Brad's idea was to start a hockey team with these guys, and 20 of them got involved initially. Now we have almost 100 warriors that came back from the war, Iraq and Iran war, whichever wars they were involved in. They're all playing hockey. And they started a business together now. Some of them are plumbers and carpenters and so on and so forth. So that's the legacy of the Flyers and what they've done and the alumni team. And I must say, I'm a boy from British Columbia, way up north near Alaska, and I've always wanted to live in that environment. I couldn't live in that environment up there because it was 54 below up there the other day. I said, holy Christ, man. But I said, thank God I'm here. But you know what? I go home in the summertime. I have my golf tournament. We have a great time, but this is home for me.
We love it.
This is home, man, and I just love the people here. And all you have to do is give an effort.
It is always wonderful to encounter with you, sir. Thank you for coming by here this morning.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
You're the best.
Pleasure to meet all you folks. Well, you're having a great
much.
time, and I can see why you're so successful because you're really friendly and you love people and everything else, and that's what life's all about.
Thank you. And natural food diet for me from here on out. That's all there is to it.